Welcome to a very special, I guess, edition of Adrenaline Memories, as well as going to be on ABC's Anesthesia YouTube channel. So Stan's going to talk to us and have a bit of a panel discussion about what it's like to not getting through this exam, and we're going to share some strategies and hear about some experiences, and hopefully this is really useful for anyone watching this as they move through exams, because let's face it, exams are tough and sometimes you don't get the desired outcome, and that's just part of life. And how to best move on, and how to use that challenge, and how to use that struggle and make yourself even better for next time. So over to you, Stan. Really excited to hear this.
No, thank you so much, La. And I really want to give a shout out to Andrew and Katerina, who are here today, and hopefully Lucas as well, for just being champions and just sort of for being role models, actually, for everyone here to sort of lead the path. Title of my talk is Embracing the F Word, and the F word is obviously for failure, but it can also stand for the other word, which we all want to shout out whenever we encounter failure. And look, the reason why I want everyone here to embrace failure is that it provides such a unique opportunity. Like, you guys are in such an amazing position, and I know it doesn't seem like that, but it's an absolute unique position that you guys are in. And, your experiences and what you'll learn from it is something that no one else will encounter. So really embrace it and see what you can learn from it. Now, the other thing that I also want you to know, and it's so important, is that you're not alone. And I think it's so heartwarming to see everyone here today. Everyone here is in the same boat, and that, your experiences, despite them unique to you, in terms of the circumstances, a lot of other people are also going through the same thing as well. And hopefully with that, you can actually gain the support that you need and require to actually succeed. Now, this is something that I've sort of reflected over the week, and it's something that I think that, I've always set myself the goal to have everyone pass the primary exam. And I know that a lot of people who I talk to will say that it's an unattainable goal. But the reason why I have that goal is that it allows me to continue to grow, to continue to realize the mistakes that I make. And also that, when I do that self-reflection, it's also to say, look, this was a mistake, you have to forgive, and you have to let that go to actually allow growth. Because they always say that, look, I think to forgive something or to forgive someone is not only just to, let the past be the past, but also to allow you to also move ahead in the future as well. Now, a couple of things with embracing failure is that you want to embrace the adversity that it brings. And as I said previously, it provides a really unique opportunity to you to find success. And within that opportunity are all those things that I think are really valuable and encompass, I think, the values that actually create success. So creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and centered around all that, compassion. Now, we have to make changes, and we have to be courageous, and we have to remove the fear of failure. I think that a lot of times the reason why we don't make changes is that we're scared. Often we don't want to do that because, we know what certainty is. And I think that what's happened now is that we need to look at the things that have happened, and we need to say, look, it hasn't led to success, but you know what? It actually provides an opportunity to reflect and actually make those changes. And when you make those changes, that process, that courage, that removal of the fear of failure, that's something that you can learn as well. And I think that is an integral part of creating success in this exam. Now, thirdly, you have to trust in positive outcomes. You have to believe, you have to commit to the skills, support, and resources that create success. I think there are so many times when when these things, when these unfortunate things happen, we tend to actually insulate ourselves, when in fact it should be the other way. We should actually reach out to others, because there are so many people out there like myself, like La. In fact, I'm sure a lot of consultants within your department as well, and a lot of your peers, they all believe in you. They all want you to pass. And all it requires is just your commitment, to the skills, support, and resources. And I'm positive that we can create the success that you guys deserve. Now, on my reflection this week, I've been thinking, what are the domains that trainees struggle with in the primary exam? So, going back in terms of my past experiences of helping trainees through since, 2008, I've been thinking, what is it? What is it that trainees struggle with? But then I thought, look, during this week, how about if I rephrase the question? If I rephrase the question in terms of what are the domains that trainees actually master in the primary exam? And I think that there are three main domains. So this is the way that I've thought about it. And the three things are technique, understanding, and recall. And when you master all three, success is nearly guaranteed. I think that sometimes you do hear trainees who probably master 2 out of the 3 and probably can get through. But if you only have 1, you're more than likely unlikely. And if you master all 3, I think that that is what's going to deliver you success. So let's quickly go through what each one entails. So with technique is definitely important in your SAQ and Viva, probably less so in your MCQ. But technique is all about timing, creating that 9 to 10 minute answer. It's also about how you space out your answer. And the more that I do, these presentations, and the more that I actually create my own answers, I've started to realize, with my writing, that 3 pages is actually optimal. So 3 or more pages is what you should be aiming for. Now, the third one's really difficult. The third one is speed and legibility. The normal average writing speed is about 100 words in 9 minutes. The exam average should be about 200 words in 9 minutes. And this is something that I think requires training. It requires commitment. It requires you to actually sit down and train your hand to actually increase that writing speed and legibility so that you can actually write that 200 words or more in 9 minutes. So this is a very technical idea. Something that I think that many people don't talk about. But the more that I mark papers, the more I realize that, if you can actually write about 200 or more words, you can actually get a lot more content down. Now, the second thing is understanding. Understanding is really important in your SAQ, Viva, and a little bit in your MCQ. For the SAQ, what I sort of talk about is the way that you format or structure your answer with subheadings. The second concept is what I call concept prioritization. So we've all got sort of different ideas when we see a short answer question in terms of what concepts are important to this answer here. And it's about ranking the ideas in order of relevance or importance. And sometimes it may actually lead to you, not including an answer or not including a concept. And that sort of flows onto, what I talk about logical flow. So logical flow is ensuring that you have connections between your ideas or connections between concepts. And even omitting certain concepts can be really important, because sometimes, what I see when I mark papers is that if a trainee has put a concept which sort of is factually correct, but doesn't flow on with what they're talking about, it starts appearing to me that perhaps they don't actually understand what they're actually writing. And so this is why understanding is so important. And this concept I'll talk about in terms of how you actually get there, or how you actually make sure that you get there. And the third thing is actually, it's a lot of groundwork. This is just recall. And all three components will test your recall. And the recall bit is about definitions, formulas, diagrams, values. They're just about memorization. This one's probably, I think a lot of us will spend a lot of hours doing recall. And so you can see that there are 3 domains. They all have their separate skill set, but they're all interlinked in terms of how they're going to create success for this primary exam. Now, the next sort of question I asked is, again, with the domains I talked about, understanding, technique, recall, why do some trainees sort of struggle mastering these domains? And again, I've rephrased the question in terms of, how do trainees master these domains? And with technique, it literally is consistent practice under exam conditions. Sitting down, pen and paper in hand, and writing your answer to time. This is really hard. It requires motivation. It's about 45 to 60 minutes a day of just writing answers to time. It can be actually quite tiring, which is why motivation is so important here, to actually push you to do this. And, I've started to realize this, speaking to other trainees about their exam process and how they actually prepare for this exam, how important this is to actually prepare for the primary exam. Make sure that, every day when you're at home, you actually practice doing a short answer question to time, and you want to train up your hand. You want to train up your writing speed. You want to train the way that, you set out, you structure your answers. The second one is understanding. So with understanding, how does it occur? Well, it occurs with active discussion, and you have to ask and receive feedback. So you can get active discussion with your study group. You can also get active discussion with anyone in theatre. But what is required is that you need consultants and colleagues who are interested. And this, I think, can be quite difficult for some trainees who perhaps don't have those resources. The second thing is, it requires courage and trust. And the reason why I say that is that there are actually a lot of consultants and colleagues who are interested in primary knowledge, but it requires courage and trust for you to reach out to them. I can tell you right now that, Lara and I was doing an episode with Stuart Watson a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things he said to us was that he was always very happy to give vivas, always very happy to share his knowledge. But lately, no one else was, no one else has been approaching him to actually get vivas off him. And this is that whole process of, that courage, getting the courage and actually trusting to go out there and asking consultant colleagues, can you look at my answer? Can you give me feedback? And yes, occasionally they might say no, but you know what? You still keep on knocking. You keep on knocking on the door, and eventually someone will say, you know what? Yes, absolutely. I'll have a look at your answer and I'll give you feedback. And this is where, when you get the feedback, you receive it, you make the changes necessary. And again, the time required is about 45 to 60 minutes a day on average. Now, finally, the third thing is recall. So recall is really just consistent retrieval practice. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of trainees nowadays will use Anki cards, or you can use flashcards, but which is what Lara and I used in the past. But it's just, with facts, reading on your flashcard or Anki decks, MCQs, or the facts associated with it, just going through about 45 to 60 minutes a day of that. And doing that consistent recall or retrieval practice, especially with numbers that, will continually reoccur. That's how you create memory. I remember a lot of times when I was studying for my primary, I had Brandis's book in the car, which was flipped to the last page, where he would just ask you like a series of short answer questions. And I remember just in the car, I don't recommend it nowadays, but I had that in the car where I was just glancing at each question and going, all right, what's the answer to this? What's the answer to this? What's the answer to this? And I'd sort of go through it in my head whilst driving. The way that I think about the barriers in terms of why, some trainees may not be able to actually get those concepts that I sort of talked about related to this, it's related to how you actually master the domains. Those barriers are problems without a solution yet. Now, I want to acknowledge that these solutions are solutions to you uniquely. I think that a lot of times, people might say very generic advice, but what I've come to realize is that everyone's situation is unique to themselves. Everyone has a very unique scenario and situation, and therefore everyone actually requires a unique solution to themselves. And so, what I want you to do is go back and have a look at these 4 questions and reflect on it and see how it relates to your situation, to your unique situation, and how you can go about answering these questions to hopefully create a solution that can actually start motivating you to master technique, to help you develop courage and trust, to master understanding, to be able to access consultants and colleagues to master understanding. And then I know this is really hard. This is probably one of the hardest bits. It's hard to protect time. You have to protect your time in order to master recall, understanding, and technique. It is so, so important. And I know that a lot of us have so many things in our lives going on, and more so nowadays, just with, I think, a lot of us have families, have other commitments as well. But how do we protect that time? And that can often be one of the most challenging aspects of this whole process. So I did the exercise for myself because, as you know, with this whole project of adrenaline memories and anesthesia coffee break with Lahiru, it does take up a lot of my time. And, I've got a full-time job, full-time public job, full-time private job as well. And the thing is, what is it that keeps me motivated to continually do, these talks or continue to deliver different formats of teaching? And, I've thought about it, and it's really about building relationships through adversity and, in my own way, be a positive influence to others, much like others have been to mine. And, I can tell you that, David's story has been a wonderful positive influence to myself, just with his selfless nature. He's always willing to teach. And, I just want to pass that on. The second question is, how do I develop courage and trust to master understanding? And this is leading into role models. So role models like Lahiru, and Lahiru will laugh and he'll say, he's not a role model, but he absolutely is. And, you look at the work that he has done in this space with teaching and also giving as well. And a lot of it has to do with actually how Lara is actually doing it. And I'm just learning from him. Now, how do I access consultants and colleagues to master understanding? Well, I'll tell you what, regular contact with you guys, where the more I teach, the more I understand. There is absolutely no doubt about it that as I, do more and more each week, I actually think about concepts very differently, or probably evolve the way that I think about concepts than how I probably did, 5-10 years ago. And this really comes about with, regular contact with everyone here. And I think that's the value of study group. It's just that idea where you can have that discussion and it allows you to reach that deeper understanding. Now, the fourth bit is, how do I protect time to do these projects? Ultimately, time that I do these projects really takes away, I guess, from other things that I want to do, or perhaps my family wants me to do. And really, I'm very, very grateful that I've got a very supportive family, and it's all through discussion. It's all being able to sort of talk with them through it. And they're very, very supportive about all these ideas. So look, I'm going to leave you with those 4 questions. And now I think we're going to have Andrew sort of go through a quick presentation before I think we'll have a little panel discussion. And I can see that Lucas is here, and we'll have that three-way discussion with all those ideas.
My name's Andrew. I'm one of the ATY1s at Western Health. And just want to quickly share my experience of my primary exam journey, basically, and provide some tips if I can. Firstly, I really like Stan's slides, really resonate with me, some of the very deep concept that he talked about. I sat the exam twice last year. In the first sitting, um, my SAQ scores were about 45%. And then I went into Viva, and I had these two very difficult examiners in one station, which I can spend a lot of time talking about. But basically, I got really tanked at that Viva station and did poorly at that station. And because my SAQ scores weren't that high enough, I wasn't able to pass overall. So basically, failed by a couple of marks. So going into the second sitting, I realized how important it is that I get a good SAQ marks, because I can't really control what kind of examiners I get, but what I can control is my ability to communicate knowledge, and therefore mastering SAQs were really my priority. So here I'm just going to talk to you briefly about that. Now, first things first, I just wanted to emphasize this, that you are not a failure, even though you were not successful. And I think it's very important to process this, because I felt terrible, obviously, when I get the email to say that I was not successful. Actually, the word they said was, you did not meet the requirements. The college never said that you failed. It just says that you did not meet requirements. But obviously, we all take that as, oh, gee, I failed. And therefore, we sort of hang on to it. And it's a pretty bad feeling. But I wanted to emphasize that you are not a failure. You were simply unsuccessful. Just like how you were unsuccessful in doing a cannula, you were unsuccessful in doing a central line or intubate. You do it again, right? And one of the best example here is, of course, Professor David's story. I was at Austin when I got the result, and I had a quick chat with David. David was like, "Why are you stressed? I sat this exam 3 times. I'm now a professor. What does that say?" So the more times you sit the primary exam, the more likely you are to be a professor of anesthesia. That's what he said to me. And I laughed. And I did not realize at the time that he was going to write an article about this. But here it is. Here's an article from the ANZCA bulletin from summer 2021, basically talking about his experience. And he talked about how bad he felt about it, but he was encouraged, and he tried. And on the third attempt, he was successful. And look at him now, doing a great job. He's such a lovely guy to boot. So highly recommend speaking to Dave's story if you're around or work in Austin. So I guess the next part is about how do I restart this. And I think it's very important that we talk about processing your own internal feelings and emotions. And like I said, I felt terrible. And I felt terrible for the first couple of weeks. And a lot of people say to me, "Hey, look, don't worry about preparing a game plan or whatever. You should just give it a break, basically." And that's exactly what I did. And I had time to sort of reflect upon things. And then I thought to myself, this was May. I have to sit the exam in August. I only have 3 months. What can I do? So I had to reflect upon my own preparation and my exam performance, and I wanted to pass, right? It's very important for me that this is results. Therefore, I should put besides, all the pride issues that I might have about, actually I thought my answers were pretty good, blah, blah, blah. Well, the examiners disagreed. That's why I had a mark of 45%. So I had to look at it from my prep, and I realized I was spread too thin. I did not listen to Stan and Lahiru's advice from the very start, which was to repeat and repeat and repeat. Instead, I did 20 years of SAQs. So I should have sort of focused more on the new curriculum. And then I decided that for me to really improve in my SAQs I have to construct a very solid game plan. And I have to ask myself, just like what Stan mentioned before, how do I master technique? How do I recall? How do I keep all this knowledge in? So that's already been covered. So it's a big slide here. Don't expect you guys to retain all this information here, but just to emphasize again that repetition is key. And I spoke to so many people, and Lucas was actually one of the person I spoke to. I spoke to people who sat the exam 3 times. I spoke to people who sat the exam 4 times. Everyone will tell you slightly different things, but there is an underlying very similar concept, and that is you have to keep doing it even though you struggle. And I spoke with Louise. I was at Austin, and Louise said, "Look, sometimes you're tired, right? You had a full day of work, but this is what you can do. So you can try to do 3 full-length SEQs to time, and then so that will take you about 30 minutes, giving yourself 9 minutes each, and then do 3 show me the money style SEQs where you're given 3 minutes to give headings, right? Try that. So you actually go through a lot of SEQs on that basis. And Louise always said, look, you're trying to aim for 3. If it's a repeat, try to aim for 4. You never know exactly what you're gonna get. You do not know that feedback, but you're gonna have to try. So one of the things I did, as per what Stan mentioned in his slide, was actually earmarking people to say, hey, look, can I send you some of my SEQs? Can you have a look at it? Have a look at the examiner's report. What do you think? Do I make sense? Does it sound good, bad? Could it be improved? So I basically write a lot of SEQs. I got people to go through my SEQs so they can say, hey, look, actually, this doesn't make sense, and I think there's a factual error here. So I use that as a way to sort of improve myself. So again, just to emphasize, repeat and repeat the SEQs. And if you're looking at the 2013 curriculum, there are actually a lot of questions. We're looking at 9.5 years already, and that's 285 past SEQ questions. And you want to keep repeating them because you find that after a while, there is a theme that you can sort of guide yourself. And you do that because when they surprise you with new questions, right? That's when you think to yourself, what are they actually asking for? And what do I really want to say to them in 9 minutes? Keeping in mind that, just like the Viva, the SEQ is a communication exercise. You might know a lot, but if you're not writing the right stuff, you're not going to get the marks. So that's why. Yeah, so other tips, just to mention that Stuart Watson, Academy Nightmares, fantastic resources, but you could never replicate what Stuart had to say for each model answer. It's frowned upon, actually, and the primary exam chair, Julia, has actually mentioned that before in the examiner reports. Please do not repeat model answers. You can't do it, we're not expecting it, and you may not be answering the question. Okay, so you have to decide for yourself, am I answering the question? Please have a look at the examiner's reports for some guidance. And then, again, as I mentioned before, you get lots of good ideas after lots of repeats. Before I get to performance coaching, I just wanted to add on to what Stan said in his slides about recall. So I was in ICU at the time, so I didn't actually get to be in theatre when I sat the first sitting. But in the second sitting, I was doing anesthetics. So every time you draw drugs, every time you prepare the anesthetic machine, every time you do a case, there's always a lot of recall material that you can go through. So the drugs that you draw, you can think about the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, the equipment, all of these things. It's active recall while you're working. So you're actually studying while you're working. It's a sort of way like what I'm doing for part 2 at the moment. It's very similar. So if you keep doing that, you are doing active recall, and you could be doing active recall multiple times a day. So I think that's a pretty good practice to do. There is one thing that I use, which I did not know exists before. There are performance psychologists, and these are the people who work with sports teams. They work with Olympians. Because remember that these guys, they have one day or the one particular event to perform the best, right? And they determine if they qualify for finals or they win the grand final. Happened to work with this guy who do AFL teams and Olympians. And I find him super useful, basically. I didn't really have a lot of sessions with him, maybe about 3. And he puts me in a good space mentally about relaxing techniques, focusing techniques on the day itself. So if you are looking for someone like him, please let me know. Finally, you got this, okay? You can get through this. You just have to believe in yourself, believe in the technique, believe in the people, and you get there. Good luck.